Zariah Brooks thought she could keep her head down, save her money, and disappear from the Fairchild mansion without a trace. But when lonely millionaire Mason Fairchild begins to see past her uniform to the intelligent, compassionate woman beneath, their connection ignites a dangerous game with his cold, calculating wife, Annabelle. In a world where reputation is everything, and love is a luxury few can afford, Zariah must decide if fighting for happiness is worth risking everything she's worked for. This is a story of forbidden love, ruthless revenge, and the courage to choose your own destiny. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The summer heat in Charleston was unbearable as Zariah Brooks walked up the long driveway to the Fairchild mansion. At 26, she had already worked for 3 wealthy families, but none as rich or as powerful as the Fairchilds. The sprawling white house with its 6 columns and perfect gardens looked like something from a movie. "This is just a job," Zariah whispered to herself as she straightened her simple navy dress. "Just another job to save for college." A tall woman with blonde hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, opened the door before Zariah could knock. "You must be the new maid." "I'm Annabelle Fairchild." Her voice was as cold as her pale blue eyes. "You're late." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Fairchild. The bus—" "I don't care about your transportation issues." Annabelle looked Zariah up and down. "Your quarters are in the East Wing. You'll have Sundays off. Everything else we'll discuss inside." Zariah nodded and followed Annabelle into the mansion. The marble floors gleamed, and paintings that probably cost more than Zariah would make in 10 years hung on every wall. "My husband Mason is very particular about his things," Annabelle continued as they walked. "Don't touch his office without permission. Don't enter our bedroom unless I ask you to clean it. And most importantly, don't bother him with questions or conversation." "Yes, ma'am." "Mrs. Fairchild," Annabelle corrected. "Not ma'am." "Yes, Mrs. Fairchild." Zariah's room was bigger than her entire apartment, with a private bathroom and a window overlooking the garden. It was beautiful, but it felt like a fancy prison. "Dinner is at 7, Annabelle said from the doorway. "You'll serve and then eat in the kitchen after we're finished. Your uniform is in the closet." When Annabelle left, Zariah sat on the bed and took a deep breath. 6 months, she told herself. 6 months of living here, saving every penny, and then she could finally afford to finish her degree. She just had to keep her head down and do her job. Zariah didn't meet Mason Fairchild until her 3rd day at the mansion. She was dusting the library when the door opened, and a tall man with dark hair and tired eyes walked in. He looked surprised to see her. "You must be the new help," he said. "Yes, sir. I'm Zariah Brooks." She kept her eyes down, remembering Annabelle's warning. "Mason Fairchild." He walked to the bar and poured himself a drink, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. "Has my wife given you the full list of rules yet?" "Yes, sir." Mason laughed, but there was no joy in it. "I'm sure she has." "Well, don't let me interrupt your work." He took his drink and left, and Zariah felt herself relax. There was something sad about him, something that didn't match the rich, powerful man she'd expected. Over the next few weeks, Zariah settled into a routine. She cleaned, served meals, and kept to herself. Annabelle was demanding but predictable. Mason was barely there, always working late or locked in his office. The Fairchilds barely spoke to each other. At dinner they sat at opposite ends of the long table, the silence broken only by the clink of silverware against china. Sometimes, Zariah caught Mason staring at his wife with a look that might have been longing, but Annabelle never noticed. She was too busy checking her phone or complaining about something one of her friends had done. One night, after a particularly tense dinner where Annabelle had criticized everything from the food to Mason's choice of tie, Zariah was cleaning up when she heard the sound of breaking glass from the garden. She looked out the window and saw Mason standing there, an empty glass shattered at his feet. She should have ignored it. It wasn't her business. But something made her grab a broom and dustpan and head outside. Mason was sitting on a stone bench, his head in his hands. He looked up when he heard her approach. "I'm sorry about the glass, sir," Zariah said quietly. "I'll clean it up." "Don't bother," Mason said. "Just add it to the list of things I've broken." Zariah knelt and began sweeping up the glass anyway. "It's my job." Mason watched her for a moment. "How long have you been here now, Zariah?" "A month? 5 weeks, sir." "And what do you think of this place?" Zariah hesitated. "It's a beautiful home." "That's not what I asked." She looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time. His eyes were the color of the ocean after a storm, and there was pain in them that seemed too deep for someone who had everything. "You're the only one in this house who doesn't lie to me with a smile." he said quietly. Zariah stood up, the dustpan full of broken glass. That's because I don't owe you anything, and I don't want anything from you, except peace. Mason stared at her, surprised by her honesty. Then he laughed, a real laugh this time. Fair enough, I'll try to break my glasses somewhere else from now on. Zariah nodded and turned to leave. Zariah, Mason called after her. Thank you. She didn't ask what he was thanking her for. She just nodded again and walked back into the house, trying to ignore the strange feeling in her chest. After that night in the garden, something changed. Mason started eating breakfast in the kitchen instead of his office, asking Zariah simple questions about her day or her life before coming to work for them. He was always respectful, never crossing any lines, but Annabelle noticed the change immediately. My husband seems to have taken an interest in you, she said one morning as Zariah was making the bed. I don't know what you mean, Mrs. Fairchild. Don't play dumb with me. Annabelle's voice was sharp. Mason doesn't talk to the help. He barely talks to me, and suddenly he's having breakfast in the kitchen like some commoner. I just serve his food, Mrs. Fairchild. That's all. Annabelle stepped closer, her perfume so strong it made Zariah's eyes water. Let me make something very clear. The Fairchild name means something in this town. I won't have it tarnished by some maid who doesn't know her place. I know my place, Zariah said, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. I'm here to do a job, and that's all I'm doing. See that it stays that way. Annabelle turned to leave but stopped at the door, and from now on, I'll be the one serving breakfast. Zariah wanted to quit right then. She had never let anyone talk to her that way, not since she left her mother's house at 18, but she thought about the money she was saving, about the business degree she was so close to finishing, and she swallowed her pride. For the next week, she avoided Mason as much as possible. When he came into a room, she found a reason to leave. When he spoke to her, she answered with the bare minimum and then excused herself. It was better this way, she told herself, safer. But one night, as she was finishing up in the kitchen, Mason came in looking for a late-night snack. You've been avoiding me, he said, leaning against the counter. I've been busy, sir. Did Annabelle say something to you? Zariah focused on wiping down the already clean counter. I don't know what you mean. Mason sighed. Yes, you do. My wife thinks she owns people, especially me. But she doesn't own you, Zariah. With all due respect, sir, this is just a job for me. I'm not here to get involved in your marriage. Is that what you think? That I'm trying to involve you in my marriage? Zariah finally looked at him. I don't know what you're trying to do. But I need this job and I don't need complications. I'm not trying to complicate your life, Mason said, his voice soft. I haven't had an honest conversation with anyone in years. Not until that night in the garden with you. There are therapists for that, sir. Mason laughed. You really don't hold back, do you? Despite herself, Zariah smiled. Not usually, no. That's what I like about you. Everyone else in my life is so careful, so calculating. Even my wife. Especially my wife. Why are you telling me this? Mason pushed himself away from the counter. I don't know. Maybe because you're the only person who might actually tell me the truth. He left before she could respond, and Zariah stood in the kitchen for a long time afterward, trying to make sense of the conversation and the feelings it stirred in her. Summer turned to fall, and the tension in the Fairchild house grew thicker with each passing day. Annabelle spent more and more time away, at charity events and lunches with friends. Mason worked longer hours, but always made time to talk to Zariah, finding her in the kitchen or the garden or the library. Their conversations started small, books they'd read, places they'd been, dreams they had. But as the weeks passed, they grew deeper. Mason told her about the pressure of running his family's business, about the loveless marriage he'd entered because it was expected of him. Zariah shared stories about growing up poor, about losing her father when she was 12, about working her way through college one semester at a time. Why did you marry her? Zariah asked one evening, as they sat in the garden, watching the sunset. It was her day off, but she had nowhere else to go, and Mason had invited her to join him for coffee. Annabelle? Mason sighed. It was a merger more than a marriage. Her family had the social connections mine needed. My family had the money hers wanted. We've known each other since we were kids, and everyone always said we'd end up together. After a while, I just stopped questioning it. Do you love her? Mason looked at her, his eyes sad. I tried to. For years I really tried. But how can you love someone who only loves what you represent, not who you are? Zariah didn't have an answer for that. She just sipped her coffee and watched as the sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue. What about you? Mason asked. Ever been in love? Once, Zariah admitted. In college. He was an art student, always covered in paint. We were together for 2 years, but then his parents moved to California, and he went with them, said he couldn't do long distance. His loss, Mason said, and the way he looked at her made Zariah's heart beat faster. It was a long time ago, she said, standing up. I should go. I have an early start tomorrow. Mason stood too, suddenly very close to her. Zariah, Don't, she said softly. Please don't say anything that we'll both regret. She walked away before he could respond, her heart pounding in her chest. This was dangerous territory, and she knew it, but she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him, the connection that had grown between them over these past months. That night, as she lay in bed, Zariah made a decision. She would give her notice in the morning. She had saved almost enough for her final semester, and she could find another job to make up the difference. It wasn't worth risking her heart or her reputation for a man who belonged to someone else. But when morning came, Annabelle was waiting for her in the kitchen, a cold smile on her perfect face. I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with my husband lately, she said, her voice like ice. We just talk sometimes, Mrs. Fairchild. That's all. Is that so? Because from where I'm standing it looks like a lot more than talking. Annabelle pulled out her phone and showed Zariah a photo of her and Mason in the garden the night before, sitting close together as the sun set. Who took that? Zariah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Does it matter? What matters is what people would think if they saw it, what they would say about a maid who spends her evenings alone with her married employer. Nothing happened. Not yet, Annabelle said, putting her phone away. But something was going to, wasn't it? I've seen the way he looks at you, the way you look at him. Zariah straightened her shoulders. I was going to give my notice today. You don't have to worry about me anymore. Oh, but I do worry, Zariah. I worry about what a scandal like this would do to the Fairchild name. I worry about what it would do to your reputation, your future. Annabelle's smile widened. It would be such a shame if you couldn't finish that business degree you've been working so hard for. Zariah felt cold all over. What do you want from me? It's simple, really. You're going to stay, and you're going to keep your distance from my husband. And in return, I won't ruin both your lives. Annabelle patted Zariah's cheek. We understand each other, don't we? Before Zariah could answer, the kitchen door opened, and Mason walked in. He stopped when he saw them, his eyes moving from Annabelle's triumphant smile to Zariah's pale face. What's going on here? He asked. Nothing, darling, Annabelle said, her voice suddenly sweet. Zariah and I were just discussing some changes to her duties. Weren't we, Zariah? Zariah looked at Mason at the concern in his eyes and knew she couldn't risk everything she'd worked for, not even for him. Yes, Mrs. Fairchild, she said quietly. We were just talking. But the look on Mason's face told her he didn't believe it for a second. For 2 weeks after Annabelle's threat, Zariah kept her distance from Mason. She served meals silently, cleaned rooms only when they were empty, and took her breaks in her room instead of the garden. Every time Mason tried to talk to her, she found an excuse to leave. It was safer this way, she told herself. She couldn't risk losing everything she'd worked for, not when she was so close to finishing her degree. But the ache in her chest grew stronger each day, and the mansion that had once felt like a prison now felt like a tomb. Mason noticed the change immediately. He caught her in the hallway one afternoon as she was carrying fresh towels to the guest bathroom. Zariah, wait, he said, gently touching her arm. Please talk to me. I can't, Mr. Fairchild. She didn't look at him. I have work to do. It's been 2 weeks. You won't even look at me. What did Annabelle say to you that morning in the kitchen? Zariah finally met his eyes, and the pain she saw there matched her own. Nothing that wasn't true. Which is what, exactly? That I'm the help, that I need to remember my place. She took a deep breath. That whatever is happening between us can't happen. Mason ran a hand through his hair, frustration clear on his face. There's nothing wrong with 2 people talking, with being friends. Is that what we are, friends? Zariah shook her head. We both know it's more than that. The words hung between them, the first time either of them had acknowledged the feelings that had been growing for months. Yes, Mason said quietly. It is more than that, at least for me. Zariah closed her eyes, fighting the tears that threatened to fall. It doesn't matter how we feel. You're married. To a woman who married my bank account, not me. A woman who hasn't looked at me with real emotion in years, if ever. That doesn't change anything. I need this job, Mason. I need to finish my degree. I can't risk that. Not even for... She trailed off. Not even for what? He pressed. Not even for you, she whispered. Mason stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, a scent that had become as familiar to her as her own. What if I told you that you didn't have to choose, that you could have both? What are you talking about? I've been thinking about this for weeks. I can help you finish your degree, not as a gift, not as charity, but as an investment in your future, in our future. Zariah stepped back, shaking her head. I don't want your money, Mason. That's not why I know that, he interrupted. That's one of the reasons He paused, then continued more softly. One of the reasons I fell in love with you. The words hit Zariah like a physical blow. Love, it was too big, too dangerous. You don't know what you're saying, she said, her voice shaking. I do know. For the first time in years, I know exactly what I want. Mason reached for her hand. I want you, Zariah. Not as my maid, not as my secret, but as my partner, my equal. And what about Annabelle? What about your marriage? It's been over for years. We just haven't admitted it. I'll talk to her, I'll file for divorce, I'll do whatever it takes. Zariah wanted to believe him, wanted to throw caution to the wind and fall into his arms. But life had taught her that nothing was ever that simple, especially for people like her. I need time to think, she said finally. It's too much. Mason nodded, letting go of her hand. Take all the time you need, but please, don't shut me out again. I can't bear it. I won't, she promised. And this time when she walked away, her heart felt both heavier and lighter at the same time. That night, Zariah couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, Mason's words echoing in her mind. Love, future, partner. Words she had never expected to hear from him, words that both thrilled and terrified her. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and decided to get a glass of water from the kitchen. The house was dark and quiet as she made her way down the back stairs, careful not to make any noise. She was just opening the refrigerator when she heard voices coming from Mason's office across the hall. The door was slightly ajar, and light spilled out into the darkened hallway. How long has this been going on? Annabelle's voice cold with fury. Nothing is going on, Mason replied, sounding tired. We've just been talking. Don't lie to me, Mason. I've seen the way you look at her, the way you find excuses to be in the same room. Do you think I'm blind? No, but I think you stopped caring about me as a person a long time ago. There was a pause. Then Annabelle laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. So this is about feeling sorry for yourself. Poor little rich boy stuck in a loveless marriage, finding comfort with the help. Don't call her that, Mason said, his voice suddenly sharp. Her name is Zariah, and she has more dignity and intelligence than half the people at your country club. Oh my God, Annabelle's voice dropped to a whisper. You're in love with her. Zariah held her breath, waiting for Mason's denial. It didn't come. Yes, he said simply. I am. The sound of glass shattering made Zariah jump. She could picture Annabelle throwing one of her crystal glasses against the wall, something she'd done before when she was angry. Have you lost your mind? Annabelle hissed. Do you have any idea what this would do to our reputation, to the business? The Fairchild name would be a laughingstock. I don't care about the name anymore. I care about being happy, about being with someone who sees me for who I am, not what I can give them. And you think she sees you, really sees you? Wake up, Mason. She sees your money, your power, your way out of cleaning toilets for a living. That's enough. Mason's voice was like steel. I didn't plan this, Annabelle. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't keep living like this, pretending our marriage is anything but a business arrangement. So what are you saying? You want a divorce? You want to throw away 15 years for some girl who's barely older than our marriage? I'm saying I want a chance at real happiness. Don't you want that too? We both know you don't love me, Annabelle. You never have. There was a long silence, and Zariah considered slipping back upstairs. She shouldn't be listening to this private conversation, but then Annabelle spoke again, her voice eerily calm. You're right. I never loved you. I loved what you represented. Security, status, the life I'd always dreamed of. A pause. But I'll be damned if I let you take that away from me now. I'm not trying to leave you with nothing. I'll be fair in the divorce. Annabelle laughed again, that same humorless sound. Fair? You think this is about money? This is about you humiliating me in front of everyone we know. This is about you throwing me away for the maid. Zariah isn't just... If you say her name one more time, I swear to God, Mason, I'll make you regret it. I'll make you both regret it. Zariah had heard enough. She quietly backed away from the kitchen and hurried up the stairs to her room, her heart pounding. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of, exactly why she'd tried to keep her distance from Mason. She sat on her bed, hands shaking. She should leave right now, pack her things and go before this got any worse. But where would she go? She'd given up her apartment when she took this live-in position. She didn't have enough saved yet for both a new place and her final semester. And then there was Mason. The thought of never seeing him again, never hearing his laugh or feeling the warmth of his gaze made her chest ache. She was in love with him too, had been for months, though she'd never allowed herself to admit it. A soft knock on her door made her jump. She opened it to find Mason standing there, his face drawn with worry. "You heard?" he said. It wasn't a question. Zariah nodded. "I was getting water. I didn't mean to eavesdrop." Mason stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "I'm sorry you had to hear it like that. I wanted to talk to you first to explain—" "You told her you love me," Zariah said softly. "Because I do." Mason took her hands in his. "I know it's complicated. I know the timing is terrible, but I can't help how I feel. When I'm with you, I feel like myself for the first time in years." She threatened to make us both regret it. Annabelle likes to threaten. It's how she's always gotten her way. But she can't hurt us. Not really. You don't know that. Zariah pulled her hands away. "I should leave. I should find another job, finish my degree somewhere else." "Running away won't solve anything," Mason said. "Please, Zariah, give us a chance. Give me time to sort things out with Annabelle. I'll talk to a lawyer tomorrow, start the divorce proceedings. And what about me? I'm still your employee. People will talk. They'll say terrible things about both of us. Then quit. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. You're not my employee anymore." Mason reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you. It's not a gift. It's not charity. It's a loan if you want to see it that way. Enough to finish your degree and get a place of your own." Zariah stared at the envelope but didn't take it. "I can't accept that." "Yes, you can, because you know I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to free you." She looked up at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and slowly took the envelope. "I'll pay you back every penny. I know you will." Mason smiled, relief clear on his face. "So you'll stay in Charleston, I mean?" "I'll stay," Zariah said. "But not here. Not in this house." "Of course not. I'll help you find a place tomorrow, and then when things are settled with Annabelle, when the dust has cleared, then we'll see," Zariah finished for him. "One step at a time, Mason." He nodded, understanding the caution in her voice. One step at a time. Before he left, he leaned down and kissed her cheek, a touch so gentle it almost broke her heart. "Good night, Zariah." "Good night, Mason." After he was gone, Zariah touched her cheek where his lips had been, allowing herself to hope, just a little, that maybe this impossible thing could work after all. The next morning, Zariah woke early and packed her things. It didn't take long. She'd never had much to begin with. The envelope Mason had given her was tucked safely in her purse, a promise of a new beginning. She was just zipping up her suitcase when there was a knock at her door. Expecting Mason, she opened it with a smile that quickly faded when she saw Annabelle standing there. "Going somewhere?" Annabelle asked, eyeing the suitcase. "I'm leaving," Zariah said simply. "I've decided to quit." "How convenient. Right after my husband declares his love for you." Zariah lifted her chin. "I don't owe you an explanation, Mrs. Fairchild. I've done my job well and now I'm moving on." Annabelle stepped into the room, forcing Zariah to back up. "You think it's that simple? You think you can just walk away with my husband and live happily ever after? I'm not taking anything from you, I'm just leaving. With his money in your pocket." Annabelle nodded toward Zariah's purse. "Oh yes, I know all about his little gift to you. Did he tell you he's planning to divorce me? That he wants to be with you? That's between you and Mason." "No, it's between all three of us now." Annabelle's eyes were hard. "Do you have any idea what a scandal like this would do to your precious business degree? Who would hire you after word gets out that you slept your way into a Fairchild fortune? That's not what happened, and you know it. It doesn't matter what happened. It matters what people believe happened. And in this town, people will believe whatever I tell them." Annabelle smiled, a cold twist of her lips. "I have friends at every bank, every major company, every university in the state. One word from me, and those doors will be closed to you forever." Zariah felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to show fear. "Are you threatening me? I'm giving you a choice. Leave town today, go back to wherever you came from, and I'll forget you ever existed. Stay, try to build a life with my husband, and I'll make sure neither of you knows a moment's peace." Before Zariah could respond, the door opened again, and Mason walked in. He looked from Zariah's pale face to Annabelle's triumphant smile and understood immediately. "That's enough, Annabelle," he said, his voice low. "You've made your point. Now leave Zariah alone." "Or what, darling?" Annabel crossed her arms. You'll choose her over the family business? Over everything we've built? Because that's what's at stake here. My father sits on the board, remember? And he's not the only one who would be disgusted to learn that you left me for the help. Stop calling her that, Mason said through gritted teeth. It's what she is, Mason. It's all she'll ever be to people like us. You might be infatuated now, but how long before you realize that you have nothing in common, that she can't possibly fit into your world? Zariah had heard enough. She grabbed her suitcase and purse. I need to go. Zariah, wait. Mason caught her arm. Don't let her do this. Don't let her scare you away. I'm not scared, Zariah said, looking directly at Annabel. I'm disgusted, and I'm done being part of this, whatever this is. So you're leaving? Mason asked, hurt in his voice. I'm leaving this house, I'm not leaving town, and I'm not running away. Zariah looked at him, willing him to understand. I need to stand on my own 2 feet, Mason. I need to finish my degree, build my life, and you need to figure out your marriage without me in the middle of it. And if I've already decided, if I know what I want, then you'll still know when the time is right. Annabel laughed. How noble. The maid walks away with nothing but her dignity. Is that the story you're telling yourself? Zariah turned to her. I'm walking away with everything that matters, my self-respect, my future, and yes, my dignity. Something you wouldn't understand. She pushed past both of them and headed for the door, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. This wasn't goodbye, not really. It was just a pause, a chance for both her and Mason to be sure before they risked everything. Zariah, Mason called after her. Where will you go? She turned back one last time. I'll be fine, I always am. And then she was gone, walking down the long driveway with her suitcase in hand, just as she had arrived months ago. But she wasn't the same person anymore, and neither was Mason. Zariah found a small apartment near the college campus and used part of Mason's money to pay the deposit and first month's rent. The rest she put aside for her tuition, determined to pay him back as soon as she could. For 2 weeks she heard nothing from him. She tried to focus on registering for her final semester, on finding a part-time job that would work with her class schedule. She tried not to think about Mason, about the look in his eyes when she left, about the threats Annabel had made. Then one rainy afternoon, as she was leaving the campus library, she saw him. Mason was standing under an umbrella, waiting for her. How did you find me? She asked. It wasn't hard. There are only so many business schools in Charleston. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Can we talk, maybe get a coffee? They found a small cafe near campus, nearly empty in the middle of the afternoon. Mason looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and new lines on his face. I filed for divorce, he said as soon as they sat down, the day after you left. Zariah nodded, not sure what to say. How did Annabel take it? About as well as you'd expect. She's contesting everything, trying to drag it out. Her father's threatening to pull his shares from the company. It's a mess. Mason ran a hand through his hair. But I don't care. It's worth it. Are you sure about that? It sounds like you're losing a lot. I'm gaining more. Mason reached across the table for her hand. I've been miserable for years, Zariah, going through the motions, playing a part in a life I never really wanted. And then you came along, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be myself. Zariah squeezed his hand. I've missed you. I've missed you too. Every day. Mason's thumb traced circles on her palm. But I didn't come here just to tell you that. I came to warn you. Warn me. About what? Annabel. Mason's expression darkened. She's been asking questions around town, trying to dig up dirt on you, and when she couldn't find any, she started making things up. Zariah felt cold all over. What kind of things? That you've done this before, targeted wealthy men, tried to break up marriages, that you stole from us before you left. None of it's true, but she's telling anyone who will listen, and people believe her. Some do. She's a Fairchild now, and in Charleston that still means something. Mason squeezed her hand. I'm fighting it, denying everything, but I wanted you to know, to be prepared. Zariah pulled her hand away, anger rising inside her. So this is her revenge? Trying to ruin my reputation because she can't keep her husband? It won't work. The truth will come out. Will it? You said it yourself. She's a Fairchild. I'm just... Zariah trailed off. You're just the woman I love, Mason finished. The woman I want to build a life with, if you'll let me. Zariah looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt her resolve weakening. Mason, Her phone rang, interrupting whatever she was about to say. She glanced at it and frowned. It was the manager of the cafe where she'd applied for a job. I need to take this, she told Mason. It's about a job. He nodded, and she stepped outside to answer the call. It was brief and to the point. The position had been filled. They were sorry, but they decided to go with someone else. When she came back to the table, Mason could tell from her face that something was wrong. "What happened?" "I didn't get the job," Zariah said, sinking back into her chair. "That's the third one this week." Mason's jaw tightened. "Annabelle, you think she had something to do with this?" "I know she did. She's making good on her threats, closing doors for you." Zariah felt tears of frustration building but blinked them away. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. "What am I supposed to do?" "I need a job, Mason. I can't live on loans forever." "Come work for me," he said suddenly. "Not as a maid. Not as anything like that. My company needs a new administrative assistant in the marketing department. It's entry level, but perfect for someone finishing a business degree." "I can't do that." "Why not? You're qualified. You'd be good at it." "Because it would look exactly like what Annabelle is accusing me of, using you to get ahead. So we keep it professional at work. No one even needs to know we're whatever we are." "And what are we, Mason?" Zariah asked softly. "What is this between us?" Mason looked at her for a long moment. "If I'd met you first," he said finally, his voice a whisper, "I would have built the world around your heart." The words hit Zariah like a physical ache, a longing so deep she could barely breathe. "But you didn't," she said. "And I'm not a woman who shares. I'm not asking you to share. I'm asking you to wait. Just a little longer until the divorce is final, until we can start fresh." Zariah wanted to believe him, wanted to say yes to everything he was offering, but something held her back, a fear not of Annabelle or her threats, but of losing herself in this whirlwind. "I need to think," she said finally, "about the job, about us, about all of it." Mason nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As they left the cafe, the rain had stopped, and the late afternoon sun was breaking through the clouds. Mason walked her to her car, and before she got in, he kissed her cheek just as he had the night before she left the mansion. "Call me when you're ready," he said. "I'll be waiting." Zariah watched him walk away, her heart full of both hope and fear. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, what new challenges Annabelle might throw their way. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing those challenges alone, and that, she thought as she drove home, was worth fighting for. A week after their meeting at the cafe, Zariah accepted Mason's job offer. She needed the money, and every other door in Charleston seemed to be closing to her. On her first day at Fairchild Enterprises, she wore her best outfit, a simple navy blue dress and the pearl earrings her grandmother had left her. The office was on the top floor of a sleek downtown building with views of the harbor. Zariah took a deep breath before stepping out of the elevator, reminding herself that she deserved to be there, that she was qualified for this job regardless of her connection to Mason. "You must be Zariah Brooks." A woman in her 40s with a kind smile greeted her. "I'm Patricia Wilson, head of the marketing department. Welcome to the team." "Thank you for having me," Zariah said, grateful for the warm welcome. "Mason, Mr. Fairchild, spoke highly of your organizational skills and work ethic. We're excited to have you on board." Zariah followed Patricia to a small but tidy desk near the window. It had a new computer, a phone, and a small plant. "This is your space," Patricia said. "We're a small department, just 5 of us, including you. We handle all the company's marketing and public relations." "It's perfect," Zariah said, setting down her purse. "When do I start?" Patricia smiled. "Right now. We have a campaign launching next week for the new riverfront development, and we're behind schedule. I hope you're ready to dive in." Zariah spent her first day learning the company's systems, meeting her co-workers, and familiarizing herself with the marketing materials for the riverfront project. Mason stopped by briefly to welcome her, keeping his tone professional and his distance appropriate. No one would have guessed from their interaction that there was anything between them beyond a business relationship. That night, as Zariah was getting ready to leave, her phone buzzed with a text from Mason. "Dinner tonight? To celebrate your first day?" She hesitated before responding. They had agreed to keep things professional, to wait until his divorce was final. But it was just dinner, just a celebration. "Okay," she texted back, "but somewhere quiet, please." They met at a small Italian restaurant on the edge of town, far from the usual haunts of Charleston's elite. Mason was already waiting in a corner booth when she arrived. "How was your first day?" he asked after they ordered. "Good," Zariah smiled. "Everyone was kind and the work seems interesting. Patricia is a great boss. She's been with the company since my father ran it, one of the few who didn't treat me like I was just the heir when I took over." "Like me," Zariah said softly. Mason reached across the table and took her hand. Exactly like you. You never saw the name or the money, just me. They talked about work, about Zariah's upcoming classes, about everything except Annabelle and the divorce. It was a perfect evening, until Zariah noticed a woman at a nearby table taking pictures of them with her phone. Mason? She whispered, nodding toward the woman. I think we're being watched. Mason glanced over, his expression darkening. One of Annabelle's friends. I should have known she'd have people looking for us. What do we do? Nothing. We're just two people having dinner. We haven't done anything wrong. But Zariah felt exposed, vulnerable. Maybe this wasn't a good idea, coming out in public like this. I'm not going to hide, Zariah. I'm not ashamed of how I feel about you. It's not about shame. It's about being smart. Annabelle is looking for ammunition, and we're giving it to her. Mason sighed. You're right. I'm sorry. I've spent so many years living by other people's rules. I'm tired of it. I know. Zariah squeezed his hand. But just a little longer, okay? Until things settle down. They finished their dinner quickly after that, and Mason insisted on paying for a taxi to take Zariah home rather than dropping her off himself. As they said goodbye outside the restaurant, he kissed her cheek, a now familiar gesture that felt both intimate and restrained. I'll see you at work tomorrow, he said. And Zariah, I meant what I said before. I'm not ashamed of us, and I won't let Annabelle hurt you. Zariah watched his car drive away, wishing she could believe that was a promise he could keep. The next morning, Zariah woke to her phone buzzing incessantly. She had 3 missed calls from Patricia and a text that simply said, "Call me urgent." A knot formed in Zariah's stomach as she dialed her boss's number. Patricia, it's Zariah. What's wrong? Have you seen the Charleston Society page this morning? Patricia's voice was tight with concern. No, why? Someone sent them photos of you and Mason at dinner last night. They're running a story suggesting that your relationship is why you got the job. Zariah closed her eyes, feeling sick. That's not true. I know that, Patricia said quickly. You're qualified for this position, and that's why I hired you. But the story is already causing problems. The board is asking questions, and Annabelle's father is demanding answers. What does Mason say? He's in emergency meetings all morning. He can't even take my calls. Patricia sighed. Zariah, I don't want to do this, but I think it might be best if you don't come in today. Just until we can sort this out. Zariah felt like the floor was dropping out from under her. Are you firing me? No, absolutely not. It's just a cooling off period. Paid, of course. I'll call you as soon as I know more. After hanging up, Zariah sat on her bed, numb with shock. One dinner. That's all it had taken for Annabelle to start dismantling the new life she was trying to build. Her phone rang again, and this time it was a number she didn't recognize. Is this Zariah Brooks? A man's voice asked when she answered. Yes. Who is this? David Chen from the Charleston Daily. I was hoping to get your comment on the story in the Society page this morning. Are you and Mason Fairchild having an affair? Zariah hung up immediately, her hands shaking. This was a nightmare. She turned off her phone and tried to think. She needed to talk to Mason, needed to know what was happening at the company, but she had no way to reach him now. By noon, she couldn't stand waiting anymore. She turned her phone back on to find 5 more missed calls from reporters and a text from Mason. Don't talk to anyone. I'm handling it. We'll call when I can. Zariah paced her small apartment, feeling trapped. This was exactly what she had feared. Exactly why she had been so cautious. Annabelle was making good on her threats, turning what was private and precious into something tawdry and scandalous. Finally, around 6 that evening, there was a knock at her door. She checked the peephole and saw Mason standing there, looking exhausted. Can I come in? He asked when she opened the door. Zariah stepped aside to let him enter. What happened today? Annabelle happened. Mason ran a hand through his hair, which was already standing on end like he'd been doing that all day. She went to the board with those photos, claiming I was giving jobs to my... Her word was, mistress. Zariah flinched at the term. What did you tell them? The truth, that you're qualified for the position, that Patricia hired you, not me, and that our personal relationship, whatever it may be, has nothing to do with your employment. Did they believe you? Mason sat heavily on her couch. Some did. Others weren't so sure. Annabelle's father was the loudest voice in the room, of course. And my job? Safe, for now. I made it clear that firing you without cause would be grounds for a discrimination lawsuit. He looked up at her. But it's going to be uncomfortable for a while. People will talk. People are already talking, Zariah said. showing him her phone with its dozens of missed calls from reporters. "This is exactly what I was afraid of, Mason. Exactly why I said we should wait. I know, and I'm sorry. But Annabelle would have done this regardless. She was just looking for an excuse. What does she want? Really want?" Mason sighed. "Control. Power. To win at any cost. She's always been like that, even before we were married. It's one of the things her father loved about her, that she never backs down. So what do we do now? We stick to the plan. I keep pushing for the divorce. You keep your head down at work and focus on your classes, and we're more careful about being seen together." Zariah sat beside him on the couch, suddenly exhausted. "How long can we live like that? Always looking over our shoulders, always worrying what Annabelle will do next?" "Not forever," Mason promised, taking her hand. "The divorce will be final eventually. She can't drag it out indefinitely, no matter how hard she tries. And then what? We ride off into the sunset like none of this ever happened? Like she didn't try to destroy both of us?" Mason was quiet for a moment. "What do you want me to say, Zariah? That I regret meeting you, falling in love with you? Because I don't. Not for a second." Zariah leaned her head on his shoulder, fighting back tears. "I don't regret it either. I never thought loving someone would be this hard." Mason put his arm around her, pulling her close. "The best things usually are." They sat like that for a long time, taking comfort in each other's presence, both wondering if their love was strong enough to withstand the storm Annabelle had unleashed. The next few weeks were a blur of whispers and sidelong glances at work, of reporters calling Zariah's phone, of Annabelle finding new ways to make their lives difficult. She contested every aspect of the divorce, demanding more money, more property, more time to consider her options. Mason was stretched thin, trying to run the company while fighting a personal battle at home. Zariah threw herself into her work and her classes, determined to prove that she deserved to be there, that she wasn't just the boss's mistress. One evening, as Zariah was leaving the office, Patricia stopped her. "You're doing a good job," her boss said. "Don't think I haven't noticed." "Thank you," Zariah said, surprised by the compliment. "That means a lot." "This will all blow over eventually," Patricia continued. "Trust me, I've been here long enough to see plenty of scandals come and go. People have short memories." "I hope you're right." Patricia smiled. "I usually am. Now go home and get some rest. You look exhausted." Zariah was waiting for the elevator when her phone rang. It was Mason. "Are you still at the office?" he asked. "Just leaving." "Why?" "I need to see you." "Can you meet me at the park near your apartment in an hour?" Something in his voice made Zariah uneasy. "What's wrong?" "I'll explain when I see you. Just be there, okay?" The hour crawled by as Zariah made her way home, changed clothes, and then walked to the small park 2 blocks from her apartment. It was nearly empty at this time of evening, just a few joggers and people walking their dogs. Mason was waiting on a bench near the pond, his suit jacket thrown over the back, his tie loosened. He looked up when he heard her approach, and the expression on his face made her heart sink. "What happened?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Annabelle went to the press," he said, his voice flat. "Not just the society page this time, the actual news. She's giving interviews, telling anyone who will listen about our affair, about how you seduced me while working in our home. That's not true. Nothing happened while I was working for you. I know that. But it's her word against ours, and she's a Fairchild." Mason rubbed his face with his hands. "The board called an emergency meeting today. They're worried about the company's image, about stock prices falling because of the scandal." Zariah felt cold all over. "What did they say?" "They want me to issue a statement denying everything. They want me to say that our relationship is purely professional, that the rumors are unfounded." "So lie." "Yes. And they want you to transfer to our office in Colombia. Same job, same pay, but far enough away to quell the rumors, as they put it." Zariah stood up, anger rising inside her. "They can't do that. They can't just ship me off like I'm the problem." "Technically, they can. It's a lateral move, not a demotion, and if you refuse, they'll fire me." Mason nodded. "I fought it, Zariah. I swear I did. But I'm outnumbered. Annabelle's father has too much influence, too many allies on the board. So what are you saying? That I should just accept this? Move to Colombia and pretend we never happened? No." Mason stood too, taking her hands in his. "I'm saying I'm done playing by their rules. I'm done letting Annabelle and her father and the board dictate my life, our lives." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm prepared to walk away. From the company, from the Fairchild name, from all of it. If that's what it takes to be with you." Zariah stared at him, shocked. "You can't do that. The company is your life, your legacy. You're my life now, Mason said simply. Everything else is just things, money, power. None of it matters if I'm miserable. Zariah pulled her hands away, shaking her head. I can't let you do that. I can't be the reason you lose everything you've worked for. It wouldn't be because of you, it would be because of me, because I finally found something, someone worth fighting for. There has to be another way, Zariah insisted. One that doesn't involve either of us giving up our dreams. Mason was quiet for a moment, thinking. Maybe there is, but it would mean playing Annabelle's game, at least for a little while. What do you mean? I mean giving her what she wants, or what she thinks she wants. Let her think she's won. I'll issue the statement the board wants, denying our relationship. You'll accept the transfer to Columbia. Mason, no. Just hear me out. You accept the transfer but ask for a few weeks to wrap things up here. Meanwhile, I'll accelerate the divorce proceedings. I'll give Annabelle more money, more property, whatever it takes to get her to sign the papers quickly. And then what? And then, when it's all over, when I'm legally free and the dust has settled, I'll step down as CEO. But you said the company is your legacy. It is, but legacies change. I've been thinking about this for a while, even before we met. I'm tired of the corporate world, of the politics and the pressure. I've been quietly working on plans for a foundation, something that would use the Fairchild wealth for actual good, instead of just making more money. Zariah blinked, surprised. You never told me that. I wasn't sure it was more than a daydream until recently, until you showed me that there's more to life than just following the path laid out for you. Mason took her hands again. So what do you say? Can you trust me just a little longer? Can you believe that I'm choosing you not out of infatuation or rebellion, but because loving you has made me a better man? Zariah looked into his eyes, searching for any doubt, any hesitation. She found none. What about my job? My degree? You can finish your classes online, and as for a job, I hear the Fairchild Foundation will be hiring soon. They'll need someone with business skills and a good heart. Despite everything, Zariah smiled. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Fairchild? I'm offering you a partnership, Mason said softly, in every sense of the word. Zariah took a deep breath, considering everything he was proposing. It wasn't a perfect plan. It meant more lies, more secrets, more time apart, but it also meant a future together on their own terms. Okay, she said finally, but I have one condition. Anything. No more secrets. No more half-truths. From now on we face everything together, even if we have to do it from different cities for a while. Mason nodded, relief clear on his face. Together, I promise. As they walked back to Zariah's apartment, hand in hand under the darkening sky, neither of them noticed the car parked across the street or the woman inside it, watching them with cold, calculating eyes. Annabelle Fairchild had not come this far to lose now, and she had one more card left to play. The next morning, Zariah went to work with a heavy heart. She had agreed to accept the transfer to Columbia, to play along with the charade a little longer. But actually doing it, actually telling her co-workers and Patricia that she was leaving, felt like admitting defeat. Patricia took the news with a sad smile. I figured this was coming. The board hasn't exactly been subtle about their concerns. I'm sorry, Zariah said. I really loved working here. Don't apologize. None of this is your fault. Patricia leaned closer, lowering her voice. And between us, I think Annabelle Fairchild is a cold-hearted snake who never deserved Mason in the first place. Zariah blinked, surprised by the usually proper Patricia's candor. You know about us? Honey, I've known Mason since he was in college. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you, not even Annabelle in the early days. Patricia patted her hand. Just be careful. That woman plays to win, and she doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. We're being careful, Zariah assured her. Mason has a plan. I hope it's a good one, because Annabelle was here earlier, asking for copies of your personnel file, said it was for the lawyers handling the divorce. Zariah felt a chill. Did you give them to her? Of course not. Those files are confidential, but she'll find another way to get what she wants. She always does. The warning stayed with Zariah all day, through meetings and phone calls, and the quiet condolences of co-workers who had heard she was transferring. What was Annabelle looking for in her personnel file? What new attack was she planning? When Zariah got home that evening, she found an envelope taped to her door. Inside was a note in Annabelle's elegant handwriting. Coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m. at Magnolia Cafe. Come alone or the board gets these. Attached was a printout of text messages between Zariah and Mason, intimate conversations they'd had over the past weeks, including discussions of their plan to wait out the divorce. Zariah's hands shook as she read them. How had Annabelle gotten access to their messages? Had she hacked Mason's phone somehow? She immediately called Mason, who was equally shocked and angry. "Don't go," he said. "It's obviously a trap. If I don't, she sends these to the board. Your statement denying our relationship will look like a lie, which it is, and they'll know we're planning to wait them out. Let her send them. I'm ready to walk away if I have to. But I'm not ready for you to do that," Zariah said firmly. "Not yet. Not until we've tried everything else. Then I'll come with you. The note says to come alone, and I think I should. Maybe woman to woman I can reach her. Make her understand that all this fighting isn't helping anyone." Mason laughed without humor. "You don't know Annabelle like I do. She doesn't want understanding. She wants victory. Still, I have to try. What's the worst that can happen in a public cafe? Just be careful and call me as soon as it's over." Zariah promised she would, but as she tried to sleep that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something more dangerous than just a tense conversation over coffee. The next morning, Zariah dressed carefully in a simple white blouse and black pants, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She wanted to look professional, composed. She wouldn't give Annabelle the satisfaction of seeing her nervous or unkempt. Magnolia Cafe was busy when she arrived, filled with the mid-morning crowd of students and professionals getting their caffeine fix. Annabelle was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. She wore a designer dress in pale pink that probably cost more than Zariah's monthly rent, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. "Right on time," Annabelle said as Zariah sat down. "I've always appreciated punctuality and the help." Zariah ignored the jab. "What do you want, Annabelle? Haven't you done enough damage already?" "Damage?" Annabelle raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "I'm not the one who seduced a married man. I didn't seduce Mason. What happened between us happened after I left your house. That's not what the press believes, or the board." Annabelle sipped her coffee. "But I didn't ask you here to argue about who did what when. I asked you here to offer you a deal." Zariah waited, not touching her coffee. $500,000, Annabelle said, her voice low. "Cash. Untraceable. You leave Charleston today, never contact Mason again, and sign a non-disclosure agreement about your relationship." Zariah stared at her, speechless. "It's a generous offer," Annabelle continued. "More than generous considering the circumstances. You could finish your degree anywhere, start a new life, never have to work again if you're careful with the money. You think you can just buy me off, pay me to disappear? I think everyone has a price. Even you, with all your dignity." Annabelle made the word sound dirty somehow. "Think about it, Zariah. No more reporters, no more whispers at work, no more hiding, just a clean break and enough money to start over." Zariah stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You really don't understand, do you? This isn't about money. It never was. Then what is it about? Love?" Annabelle laughed. "Please, men like Mason don't end up with women like you. They might play with you for a while, might even convince themselves it's real, but eventually they go back to their own kind." "And what kind is that? Cold? Calculating? Only interested in status and money?" Zariah shook her head. "Mason deserves better than that. Better than you." Annabelle's eyes hardened. "You have no idea what Mason deserves. You've known him for what, 6 months? I've been by his side for 15 years. I've built a life with him, a reputation, a legacy. A life he was miserable in. A reputation built on lies. Some legacy. You naive little girl." Annabelle stood too, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You think this is a fairy tale? That love conquers all? This is the real world. And in the real world, Mason Fairchild doesn't end up with the maid." "Maybe not," Zariah said, meeting Annabelle's gaze without flinching. "But he doesn't end up with you either, not anymore." She turned to leave, but Annabelle grabbed her arm, her manicured nails digging into Zariah's skin. "If you walk away from this offer, I will destroy you," she hissed. "Both of you. I'll make sure everyone in Charleston knows exactly what kind of woman you are. I'll make sure Mason loses everything, the company, his reputation, even that precious foundation he thinks I don't know about." Zariah pulled her arm free. "Do your worst, Annabelle. Mason and I aren't afraid of you anymore." As she walked out of the cafe, her heart pounding but her head high, Zariah felt lighter than she had in weeks. She had faced Annabelle's worst and hadn't broken. Whatever came next, she and Mason would face it together. What she didn't know was that Annabelle had one final, devastating card to play, one that would test their love in ways neither of them could have imagined. Zariah called Mason as soon as she left the cafe, telling him about Annabelle's offer and her refusal. $500,000, Mason said, sounding shocked. She must be desperate. She is. And desperate people are dangerous. Zariah paused, hesitating before sharing the worst part. She threatened your foundation, Mason. She said she'd make sure you lost everything. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Mason sighed. I'm not surprised. Annabelle has always been thorough. She probably had me investigated the moment I filed for divorce. What do we do now? We move up our timeline. I'll call my lawyer today, tell him to offer Annabelle whatever she wants in terms of the settlement. Money, property, anything except company shares. And in return, she signs the papers this week. Will she agree to that? If the price is right, yes. For all her talk about legacy and reputation, Annabelle has always cared most about security, financial security. And if she doesn't agree, then we go to plan B. I walk away from everything, and we start fresh somewhere else. Zariah felt a pang of guilt. I never wanted you to give up your life for me. I'm not giving up my life, Mason said gently. I'm choosing a better one with you. After they hung up, Zariah tried to focus on work, but her mind kept returning to Annabelle's threats. She knew the other woman wasn't done yet, that she wouldn't simply accept defeat and walk away. Sure enough, when Zariah checked her email during her lunch break, she found a message from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read simply, "You should see this." Against her better judgment, Zariah opened it. Inside was a link to a private web page. When she clicked it, her blood ran cold. It was a mock-up of a newspaper article, complete with the Charleston Daily's logo and formatting. The headline read, "Former maid accused of theft from Fairchild estate." The article claimed that Zariah had stolen jewelry and cash from the Fairchild home during her employment, that she had used her relationship with Mason to avoid prosecution, and that sources close to the family were now coming forward with evidence. At the bottom of the mock-up was a note. "This runs tomorrow unless you reconsider my offer. Last chance." Zariah's hands shook as she called Mason again. "She's going to accuse me of theft," she said, as soon as he answered. "She sent me a draft of an article that's supposed to run tomorrow." "What? That's insane and completely false." "Of course it's false, but people will believe it, and once it's out there, the damage is done." Zariah took a deep breath. "Maybe I should take her offer, Mason, just to make this stop." "No," Mason's voice was firm. "That's exactly what she wants. If you take her money, it looks like an admission of guilt, like you have something to hide. So we just let her publish lies about me, destroy my reputation. I'll never get a job anywhere after this." "We fight back," Mason said, "with the truth. I've been trying to handle this quietly, to protect both our reputations. But maybe it's time to bring everything into the light." "What do you mean?" "I mean a press conference. Tomorrow morning, before that article can run. I'll tell everyone exactly what's been going on. The loveless marriage, Annabelle's threats, everything. Are you sure that's a good idea? It could backfire." "It's a risk," Mason admitted. "But I'm tired of hiding, Zariah. Tired of pretending. And if Annabelle wants to play dirty, she's about to learn that I can fight just as hard for what I believe in." After they hung up, Zariah tried to imagine what would happen tomorrow. A public confrontation between Mason and Annabelle, their private lives exposed for everyone to see. It seemed like a nightmare. But maybe it was the only way to end this, once and for all. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Patricia standing by her desk until her boss cleared her throat. "Everything okay?" Patricia asked, concern in her eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just personal stuff," Zariah said, closing her email. "Nothing to worry about." Patricia wasn't fooled. "Annabelle again?" Zariah nodded, not seeing any point in lying. "She's threatening to accuse me of stealing from them while I worked there." "That's ridiculous," Patricia scoffed. "Anyone who knows you knows you'd never do something like that. But most people don't know me. They just know the gossip, the rumors." Patricia sat on the edge of Zariah's desk. "Want some advice from someone who's been around the block a few times? Please, stop reacting. Every time Annabelle makes a move, you and Mason scramble to respond. You're playing her game by her rules, and you'll never win that way." Zariah frowned. "So what should we do instead? Change the game. Do something she's not expecting." Patricia stood up. "Anyway, just a thought. And whatever you decide, know that you have more allies than you think." With that cryptic statement, she walked away, leaving Zariah to wonder what she meant. That evening, Mason came to Zariah's apartment to discuss their plans for the press conference. He looked tired, the strain of the past weeks visible in the new lines around his eyes. "My lawyer contacted Annabelle's team," he said, accepting the cup of coffee Zariah offered. "Made the offer I told you about. More money, more property, quick divorce. And they're considering it, which means Annabelle is still holding out for something else. Like me leaving town with my tail between my legs. Probably." Mason took a sip of his coffee. "I've scheduled the press conference for 10 a.m. tomorrow at the company headquarters. The PR team is sending out notices to all the major outlets now. What exactly are you going to say?" "The truth, that our marriage has been over in all but name for years, that we're divorcing, that I've found someone who makes me happy and I won't apologize for that." "And what about her accusations?" "I'll address those too. Make it clear that they're completely false, that they're a desperate attempt to hurt you because she can't hurt me." Zariah sat beside him on the couch. "This is really happening, isn't it? After tomorrow, everyone will know about us. Is that okay with you? I know we talked about waiting, about keeping things quiet until the dust settled. I think Patricia was right. We need to change the game." Zariah took his hand. "No more hiding. No more letting Annabelle dictate the terms. Let's face this together in the open." Mason squeezed her hand. Together. They spent the rest of the evening planning what Mason would say, anticipating questions, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. It was nearly midnight when Mason finally left, promising to pick Zariah up in the morning so they could arrive at the press conference together. "No more hiding," he reminded her at the door. "No more secrets." Zariah barely slept that night, her mind racing with all the possible outcomes of tomorrow's press conference. Would people believe them? Would Annabelle have some new attack ready? Would this finally end the war between them, or just escalate it further? When morning came, she dressed carefully in a simple but elegant blue dress, the same color as the one she'd worn on her first day at the mansion. It felt right somehow, like coming full circle. Mason arrived promptly at 9, looking powerful and determined in a dark suit. He kissed her cheek when she opened the door, his eyes taking in her appearance. "You look beautiful," he said. "Ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." The drive to Fairchild Enterprises was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Mason's assistant, a young man named David, was waiting for them in the lobby. "Mr. Fairchild, there's something you should know," he said, his expression worried. "Mrs. Fairchild is already here. She's in the conference room where the press is gathering." Mason's jaw tightened. "What is she doing here?" "She says she has a right to tell her side of the story and—" David hesitated. "She's not alone. She brought her father and several members of the board." Mason and Zariah exchanged a look. This was an ambush, clearly planned in advance. "Should we cancel?" Zariah asked quietly. "Regroup?" "No," Mason said firmly. "We're doing this now, today. No more delays." They took the elevator to the top floor, where the large conference room had been set up for the press conference. Through the glass doors, Zariah could see that the room was packed with reporters, cameras, and in the front row, Annabelle, sitting beside her father, a stern-looking man with silver hair and cold eyes. Mason took Zariah's hand. "Stay by my side. Whatever happens in there, remember that I love you." Zariah nodded, suddenly unable to speak past the lump in her throat. When they entered the room, all eyes turned to them. Cameras flashed, and there was a low murmur of voices. Annabelle stared at their joined hands, her expression a mix of fury and triumph, like she'd been expecting this, but was still enraged to see it. Mason led Zariah to the podium at the front of the room, never letting go of her hand. He adjusted the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice steady. "I've called this press conference to address the rumors and speculation about my personal life that have been circulating in recent weeks." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Yes, my wife Annabelle and I are divorcing. It's a decision that has been a long time coming, the result of years of growing apart rather than together. This is a private matter, and we would have preferred to handle it privately." Annabelle shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing. "However," Mason continued, "certain accusations have been made that I can't allow to stand unchallenged. So let me be clear. Zariah Brooks, who is standing beside me today, is not responsible for the end of my marriage. She is not a thief, as some have suggested. She is a hard-working, intelligent woman who has shown me what real connection looks like." The room erupted in questions, reporters calling out and cameras flashing even more intensely. Mason held up a hand for silence. "I won't be taking questions about the details of my relationship with Ms. Brooks, except to say that it began after she was no longer employed in my home, and that it is based on mutual respect and genuine affection." Annabelle stood up suddenly, her face flushed with anger. "That's a lie," she shouted. They were carrying on right under my roof, while she was working for us. Mason remained calm. That's not true, Annabelle, and you know it. I know that you've been lying to me, to the board, to everyone. Annabelle pointed a shaking finger at Zariah. She seduced you to get ahead, to get her hands on the Fairchild fortune, and you were too blind to see it. Before Mason could respond, another voice cut through the chaos. That's enough, Annabelle. All heads turned to see Patricia standing in the doorway, holding a folder in her hands. This doesn't concern you, Patricia, Annabelle snapped. This is a family matter. It became my concern when you tried to access confidential personnel files, when you started spreading lies about one of my employees. Patricia walked to the front of the room, standing on Zariah's other side. I've worked for Fairchild Enterprises for 20 years. I've known Mason since he was in college, and I've never seen him as happy as he's been these past few months. Annabelle laughed harshly. Oh, please, are we supposed to care about his happiness? What about his responsibilities, his duty to the family name? What about your duty? Patricia shot back. You promised to love and cherish him, but all you've ever cared about is the status his name gave you. How dare you? I dare because I'm tired of watching you hurt good people. Patricia opened the folder she was carrying. I have here statements from 5 former employees of the Fairchild household, all detailing how Annabelle mistreated staff, how unhappy the marriage was long before Zariah ever worked there, and most importantly, how Annabelle herself has been having an affair with her tennis instructor for the past 2 years. The room went completely silent. Annabelle's face drained of color, and her father stood up, looking thunderstruck. That's a lie, Annabelle whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. Is it? Patricia raised an eyebrow. Because I also have credit card statements showing payments to a hotel in Savannah every Thursday afternoon for the past year. Shall I read out the room number? Or perhaps the room service orders? They're quite revealing. Mason looked as shocked as everyone else. Annabelle, is this true? For the first time since Zariah had known her, Annabelle seemed at a loss for words. She looked around the room wildly, like a cornered animal. It's different, she finally said. My situation is different. How? Mason asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. How is it different? Because I never would have left you for him. I never would have humiliated you publicly. No, you just humiliated me privately for years. Mason shook his head. You could have told me, Annabelle. We could have ended this marriage years ago, gone our separate ways with our dignity intact, and let you keep everything. Let you win. Annabelle laughed bitterly. That was never going to happen. Her father stood up, his face tight with barely controlled rage. That's enough, Annabelle. You've embarrassed yourself and this family quite enough for one day. He turned to Mason. I think it's time we had a private conversation, Mason, about the divorce settlement and about the future of your role in the company. Mason nodded. I agree. But know this, sir. I won't be bullied or threatened anymore. Not by you, not by the board, and certainly not by Annabelle. The older man's eyes flicked to Zariah, then back to Mason. Understood. My office. 1 hour. He took Annabelle's arm and led her from the room, ignoring the shouted questions from reporters. Annabelle allowed herself to be guided out, but at the door she turned back to look at Mason and Zariah. This isn't over, she mouthed, her eyes cold with hatred. But Zariah, standing tall beside the man she loved, knew that it was. Annabelle's power over them was broken. Her threats were empty now, her reputation as damaged as she had tried to make theirs. Mason turned back to the reporters. I think that's all for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. He led Zariah out through a side door, away from the chaos of the press room. Patricia followed them, closing the door behind her. Thank you, Mason said, turning to her. Though I have to ask, how did you know about Annabelle's affair? Patricia smiled. The staff talk, Mason. They always have, and unlike some people, they actually liked you. They wanted you to be happy. Zariah hugged her impulsively. You saved us. No, Patricia said, returning the hug. You saved each other. I just helped level the playing field a bit. After Patricia left, Mason pulled Zariah into a quiet corner of the hallway. Are you okay? That was intense. I'm okay, Zariah said, surprised to find it was true. Actually, I'm better than okay. I feel like I can breathe again. Me too. Mason touched her cheek gently. But I have to ask, does it bother you, finding out that Annabelle was cheating all this time? Zariah thought about it for a moment. No, she said finally. It doesn't change how I feel about you, about us. If anything, it just makes me sad for her. Sad? After everything she's done to us. Sad that she had something real, a husband who tried to love her, a life most people would envy, and it wasn't enough. She needed the affair, the power games, the revenge. What a lonely way to live. Mason looked at her with wonder in his eyes. This is why I love you, because you can find compassion even for someone who tried to destroy you. Well, don't get me wrong, Zariah said with a small smile. I'm still glad Patricia exposed her, and I hope she stays far, far away from us from now on. Mason laughed, pulling her into his arms. Me too. And speaking of distance, how would you feel about finishing your degree in New York? New York? Why? Because I just had an idea. The Fairchild Foundation doesn't have to be based in Charleston. It could be anywhere. New York has some of the best non-profits in the country, connections we could use, people we could help. You want to move to New York? Zariah pulled back to look at him. Leave Charleston, your home, your family business? The business will be fine without me. And as for a home, Mason's eyes were soft as he looked at her. I'm starting to think home isn't a place. It's a person. Zariah felt tears prick her eyes. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm just getting started, Mason promised. So what do you say? New York? A fresh start for both of us? Yes, Zariah said without hesitation. Yes to New York. Yes to a fresh start. Yes to building something new together. Mason kissed her then, right there in the hallway of Fairchild Enterprises, not caring who might see, and Zariah kissed him back, finally free of secrets, of hiding, of the shadow Annabelle had cast over their relationship. They had a long road ahead of them. The finalization of the divorce, Mason's meeting with Annabelle's father, the transition out of the company, the move to New York. But for the first time, Zariah was confident they would make it, together. 3 months later, Zariah stood in the living room of their new apartment in New York, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. The divorce had been finalized more quickly than expected, with Annabelle taking a generous settlement and, to everyone's surprise, moving to Europe for an extended break, as she put it in her only public statement. Mason had stepped down as CEO of Fairchild Enterprises, though he retained his shares in the company. His cousin, a capable businessman who had been groomed as his backup for years, took over without much fuss, and the Fairchild Foundation was now a reality, with offices in a renovated brownstone in Brooklyn. Their mission, to provide educational opportunities and support for working adults trying to complete their degrees while supporting themselves. Zariah's own experience had been the inspiration, and she was deeply involved in shaping the Foundation's programs, even as she finished her own final semester online. The doorbell rang, and Zariah opened it to find a delivery man holding a large box. "Delivery for Brooks Fairchild," he said. "That's us." Zariah signed for the package, curious about what it could be. They weren't expecting anything. When Mason came home an hour later, she was sitting on the couch, staring at the contents of the box. A deed to a small house in her name and a letter. "What's that?" he asked, setting down his briefcase. Wordlessly, Zariah handed him the letter. It was brief but clear. Not a gift. A beginning. Not a favor. A future. Not from a millionaire. From the man who finally knows what love looks like. Mason looked from the letter to Zariah's face. "I don't understand. Is this from some secret admirer I should be worried about?" Zariah shook her head, tears in her eyes. "It's from you. Or, it was supposed to be from you. I didn't send this, Zariah. I know. But these words, they're exactly what you said to me in the garden that night months ago. When you told me that if you'd met me first, you would have built the world around my heart." Mason took the deed, examining it. "It's for a house in Brooklyn, not far from the Foundation. Who would do this? Who even knows about those words?" Mason's expression darkened. "Annabelle. She must have had the house bugged, been listening to our conversations all along. That's how she knew so much, how she always seemed one step ahead. But why would she send this now, after everything? I don't know, maybe it's one last power play. Her way of saying she still knows things about us, still has some control." Zariah looked at the deed again. "What should we do with it?" Mason thought for a moment. "It's in your name. Legally, it's yours. You could sell it, donate it, whatever you want. Or we could live in it," Zariah said slowly. "Take what was meant to hurt us and turn it into something good. A real home." Mason smiled, sitting beside her on the couch. "I like that idea, but first, I think we should have it checked for bugs and change all the locks." Zariah laughed, leaning against him. "Definitely." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, contemplating this unexpected twist in their story. "You know," Mason said finally, "in a strange way, I almost feel like I should thank Annabelle. Thank her for trying to destroy us, for failing to destroy us, for making us fight for what we have, for making us prove, to ourselves as much as to her, that what we have is real. Zariah considered this. I wouldn't go so far as to thank her, but I understand what you mean. Everything we went through, it showed us what we're made of, both of us. Mason kissed her softly. And what are we made of, Zariah Brooks? She smiled against his lips, something stronger than revenge. 1 year later, on a bright spring morning, Zariah stood in the garden of their Brooklyn home, the house that had been Annabelle's final attempt at control, now transformed into a place of peace and love. Mason was beside her, handsome in a light grey suit, his eyes never leaving her face. Their friends and family surrounded them, Patricia and her husband, Zariah's college roommate and her family, even Mason's cousin and his wife. It was a small gathering, intimate and perfect. Do you, Mason James Fairchild, take Zariah Nicole Brooks to be your lawfully wedded wife? The officiant asked. I do, Mason said, his voice strong and sure. With all my heart. And do you, Zariah Nicole Brooks, take Mason James Fairchild to be your lawfully wedded husband? Zariah looked into the eyes of the man who had seen her, truly seen her, when she was just the quiet maid in the background, the man who had chosen love over legacy, truth over appearance, her over everything else. I do, she said, her voice clear in the spring air, today and always. As they exchanged rings and sealed their vows with a kiss, Zariah thought about the journey that had brought them here. The mansion in Charleston seemed like another lifetime ago. The cold silences, the tense dinners, the garden where they'd first spoken honestly to each other. They had come so far from that place, faced so much together. Annabelle's revenge had failed, not because they were stronger or smarter or richer, but because what they had built together was real. It was a love based not on what they could give each other or what they represented, but on who they truly were. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. At the reception afterward, as they danced under twinkling lights in the garden, Mason whispered in her ear, "If I'd met you first, I would have built the world around your heart." And Zariah, smiling up at the man who was now her husband, replied, "You did anyway." The end.